Charlie Watts thought he and Duke Hanley were blood brothers, until Duke rode off with the gold and left Charlie holding the sack when the law showed up. Now Charlie's running with a bounty on his head and one name on his list. The sun beat down on the dusty plains as Charlie Watts squinted, his gaze fixed on the horizon. 35 minutes. That's all the time we have to tell this story. A story about brotherhood, betrayal, and the long shadow of the law. Charlie and Duke, names whispered in saloons, feared by sheriffs, and remembered with a mix of awe and resentment by the townsfolk they'd crossed paths with. They were like brothers, raised in the harsh landscape of poverty and opportunity. Duke, the charismatic leader, always had a plan, a twinkle in his eye, and a silver tongue that could charm the birds from the trees. Charlie, the loyal follower, was the muscle, the steady hand, the one you could always count on. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. Their life wasn't easy. They rode hard, slept under the stars, and always had to watch their backs. But they had each other. That was all that mattered, or so Charlie thought. Their partnership wasn't just about survival, it was a carefully built enterprise. They started small, lifting wallets and pilfering goods from unguarded wagons. As they grew bolder, their cons became more elaborate. Duke was the brains, dreaming up schemes that seemed impossible, while Charlie was the brawn, executing them with unwavering determination. They specialized in robbing stagecoaches, targeting wealthy merchants and crooked politicians. They'd become known for their clean getaways, leaving lawmen scratching their heads and townspeople whispering in fear and admiration. One time they even managed to swap a herd of cattle with painted mules, leaving the buyer fuming and the brothers howling with laughter. Their bond was cemented by shared experiences, nights spent huddled around a campfire, dodging bullets during a botched robbery, patching each other up after a bar fight. They were each other's family, the only constant in a world of uncertainty. But even in their world of shared danger and triumphs, cracks began to appear. Duke started taking bigger risks, chasing larger scores. He'd always been ambitious, but now that ambition seemed to border on recklessness. He started frequenting fancier saloons, gambling away their hard-earned cash and associating with shadier characters. Charlie, on the other hand, preferred the simple life. A warm meal, a strong drink, and a safe place to sleep were enough for him. He worried about Duke's gambling debts and the kind of company he was keeping. More than once, Charlie tried to talk to Duke about slowing down, about playing it safe. "We've got enough, Duke," he'd say, nursing a beer in some dimly lit cantina. "Why push our luck?" But Duke would just laugh, slap Charlie on the back, and say, "That's the difference between you and me, Charlie. You're content, I want it all." And in that moment, Charlie saw a glint in Duke's eyes that he didn't recognize, a glint of something cold and hungry. The bank in Redemption Gulch was Duke's idea, a big score, he called it, the kind of score that would set them up for life. Charlie was hesitant, banks were different. Banks meant guards, vaults, and the very real possibility of spending the rest of their days behind bars. "It's too risky, Duke," Charlie argued, tracing circles in the dust with his boot. "We've always stayed away from banks." Duke paced back and forth, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "But think of the reward, Charlie. Enough to buy our own ranch, live like kings. No more running, no more looking over our shoulders." He painted a picture of a life of ease and comfort, a life far removed from the hardships they'd always known. And for a moment Charlie was tempted. The thought of settling down, of finally having a place to call home was alluring, but the risk was immense. "I don't know, Duke," Charlie said, his voice filled with doubt. "I just don't know." Duke clapped him on the shoulder, a confident smile spreading across his face. "Trust me, Charlie, this is the one." The morning of the robbery dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Charlie's stomach. They rode into Redemption Gulch like any other pair of travelers, tying their horses near the saloon. Duke flashed Charlie a reassuring smile, but Charlie couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Inside the bank, everything moved in slow motion. Duke barked orders, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. Charlie covered the patrons, his gun steady but his heart pounding in his chest. A nervous teller fumbled with the vault, delaying their escape. Suddenly, a shot rang out. A brave or foolish shopkeeper had pulled a hidden pistol. Chaos erupted. People screamed, diving for cover. Duke returned fire, hitting the shopkeeper. The teller finally opened the vault, and Duke began stuffing bags with cash. But the delay had cost them. The town marshal and his deputies were on their way. Duke glanced at Charlie, a flicker of panic in his eyes. It was time to go. Duke grabbed the bags of money and bolted for the back door. Charlie, still covering the crowd, saw the marshal and his deputies burst through the front entrance. He fired a warning shot, buying Duke a few precious seconds. He expected Duke to return the favor to cover his escape, but Duke didn't. Charlie turned to see Duke disappearing out the back, leaving him alone to face the music. A wave of disbelief washed over him. He couldn't believe it. Duke, his brother, was leaving him to take the fall. The deputies opened fire, bullets whizzing past Charlie's head. He returned fire, buying himself time to escape. He dove through a window, landing hard on the dusty street. He knew he had to get out of Redemption Gulch, and fast. But as he ran, the image of Duke disappearing through that back door was burned into his mind. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Charlie rode hard, pushing his horse to its limits. He needed to put as much distance as possible between himself and Redemption Gulch. The lawmen would be hot on his trail, and he knew they wouldn't be taking prisoners. He barely managed to grab his rifle and a few essentials before fleeing. He found refuge in a secluded canyon, tending to his wounds and trying to make sense of what had happened. Duke had betrayed him, left him to die. The thought was a constant ache in his chest. He couldn't understand it. They were brothers. How could Duke do something like that? He knew he couldn't stay in the canyon for long. The law would find him eventually. He needed a plan. He needed to find Duke, not just for revenge, but for answers. He needed to understand why. As he cleaned his rifle, a grim determination settled over him. He would find Duke no matter the cost. The man had some explaining to do. The next morning, Charlie rode into a small town called Dust Creek, hoping to resupply. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact, but the wanted posters were everywhere. His face, alongside Duke's, stared back at him, accusing and unforgiving. He managed to buy some beans and ammunition at the general store, but the storekeeper eyed him with suspicion. As Charlie left, he noticed a group of men whispering near the livery. He recognized the marshal's badge glinting in the sun. They were waiting for him. Charlie knew he had to act fast. He ducked into an alley, disappearing between the buildings. He could hear the marshal shouting, "There he is, after him." He scrambled over fences, dodged barking dogs, and finally reached the edge of town. He stole a fresh horse from a nearby ranch, leaving his exhausted mount behind. He glanced back at Dust Creek, seeing the posse in pursuit. He was a wanted man, hunted and alone, and it was all Duke's fault. Days turned into weeks as Charlie continued his flight, always one step ahead of the law. He traveled through harsh terrain, sleeping in caves and hunting for food. He trusted no one, knowing that anyone could turn him in for the reward. One evening, huddled around a small fire, he found a discarded newspaper. The headline screamed about the Redemption Gulch Bank robbery. He scanned the article, his eyes widening in disbelief. The article described him as the mastermind, the ruthless leader who orchestrated the entire operation. It also mentioned the bounty, $5,000 for his capture, dead or alive. $5,000, that's when the full weight of Duke's betrayal crashed down on him. It wasn't just about leaving him behind. Duke had framed him. He had made Charlie the scapegoat, ensuring that he would take the fall for everything. The anger inside Charlie burned hotter than the fire in front of him. It wasn't just about answers anymore. It was about justice and revenge. Duke had made a powerful enemy. The fire of revenge burned bright, but it wasn't the only thing consuming Charlie. Beneath the anger, a deep ache lingered. He couldn't completely extinguish the memories of their shared past, the countless times Duke had saved his life, the laughter they had shared, the unwavering loyalty they had sworn to each other. He remembered Duke pulling him from a raging river when they were boys, Duke taking the blame for a crime Charlie had committed, Duke nursing him back to health after a near-fatal gunshot wound. Those memories were like ghosts haunting his waking hours. He knew what he had to do. He had to find Duke. But the thought of killing him, of ending the life of the man he once considered a brother, filled him with a profound sense of dread. Could he really pull the trigger? Could he condemn Duke to death even after everything? The conflict raged within him, a battle between loyalty and betrayal, love and hate. He was a man torn in two, his heart at war with itself. Charlie started his hunt for Duke, his journey taking him through dusty towns, across desolate plains, and over towering mountain ranges. He became a shadow, moving unseen, asking questions in hushed tones, piecing together clues like a detective searching for a missing piece of a puzzle. He learned that Duke had been seen heading west, towards the border. He had changed his name, dyed his hair, and was flashing around large sums of money. He was living the high life, spending the stolen loot on fancy clothes, expensive whiskey, and loose women. The thought of Duke living it up while he was struggling to survive fueled Charlie's anger even more. He pressed on, driven by a single-minded determination. He would find Duke no matter how long it took, no matter how far he had to go. He knew Duke's habits, his favorite haunts, and the kind of people he liked to surround himself with. It was only a matter of time. The hunt was on. The law was a constant threat, a shadow lurking around every corner. Charlie had to be careful, resourceful. He donned disguises, a traveling preacher, a grizzled prospector, a mute farmhand, anything to blend in and avoid detection. One time he was cornered in a saloon by a group of deputies. He pretended to be drunk, slurring his words and stumbling around until he managed to slip out the back unnoticed. Another time he hid in a coffin during a funeral procession, narrowly avoiding a checkpoint. His near misses were becoming more frequent, the pressure mounting with each passing day. He knew he couldn't keep running forever. He had to find Duke, settle things once and for all. The desperation gnawed at him, pushing him to take even greater risks. He was a man on the edge with nothing left to lose. The hunt for Duke was consuming him, body and soul. During the long nights, huddled by the fire, memories flickered like the flames. He remembered a time when they were just kids, skinny and scrappy, stealing apples from the orchard. He remembered their first successful stagecoach robbery, the thrill of the chase, the camaraderie of shared danger. He remembered Duke teaching him how to shoot, how to ride, how to survive in the harsh wilderness. He remembered the time Duke took a bullet for him, saving his life without hesitation. Those memories were a constant reminder of what they had lost, of the bond that had been shattered. He saw Duke's face in his dreams, smiling, laughing, loyal. And then the smile would fade, replaced by a cold, calculating look, the look of the man who had betrayed him. The flashbacks were a torment, a constant tug-of-war between the past and the present, between the man he knew and the man Duke had become. They strengthened his resolve, but also deepened his pain. The good times made the betrayal even harder to accept. In a grimy saloon in a lawless border town, Charlie finally caught a break. A sniveling informant, eager to earn a few dollars, whispered that Duke was holed up in a ranch a few days' ride north. The snitch claimed Duke was planning to skip across the border into Mexico. Later that night, a drunken cowboy recognized Charlie from the wanted posters and started mouthing off. A brawl erupted, fists flying, tables crashing. Charlie, fueled by pent-up rage, fought like a man possessed. When the dust settled, the cowboy was unconscious, and Charlie had overheard him bragging about seeing Duke at a gambling den in the next town over. Finally, a stroke of pure luck. While mending a broken saddle, he found a discarded letter with Duke's new alias and a vague reference to a meeting point, a place called Shadow Creek. Charlie felt a surge of adrenaline, Shadow Creek. It was a name he recognized from their childhood, an abandoned mine where they used to play. He knew where Duke was. The hunt was almost over. Before heading to Shadow Creek, Charlie sought out one last source, a woman named Lily who used to sing at the saloon Duke frequented. Lily was reluctant to talk, but after some gentle persuasion, she revealed a shocking truth. Duke's mother was gravely ill, suffering from a disease that required expensive treatment. Duke had been desperate to save her, to provide her with the best possible care. The bank robbery wasn't about greed, it was about saving his mother's life. Lily even showed Charlie letters from Duke, filled with worry and a fierce determination to get the money. The revelation hit Charlie hard. He understood Duke's desperation, his willingness to do anything to save his mother. But it didn't excuse his betrayal. It didn't erase the fact that he had left Charlie to die, framed him for the crime. But it did add a layer of complexity, a human element to Duke's actions. Charlie's anger was now tinged with a sliver of understanding, making the decision he had to make even harder. Shadow Creek loomed before him, a ghost town bathed in the eerie glow of the setting sun. The abandoned mine shafts gaped like empty sockets, silent witnesses to a long-forgotten past. Charlie dismounted, his hand resting on the handle of his gun. He could feel Duke's presence, a palpable tension in the air. He moved slowly, cautiously, his senses on high alert. He found Duke near the entrance to the main mine shaft, packing supplies onto a mule. Duke looked up, his eyes widening in surprise, then hardening with resolve. "Charlie," Duke said, his voice low and gravelly. "I knew you'd come." "Duke," Charlie replied, his voice barely a whisper, "it's over." The two men stood facing each other, the silence broken only by the whistling wind. The years of friendship, the shared adventures, the bitter betrayal, all hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. The final confrontation had arrived. There would be no turning back. "Why, Duke?" Charlie demanded, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Why did you leave me there? Why did you frame me?" Duke shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Charlie's gaze. "I didn't have a choice, Charlie. It was the only way." "The only way for what? To save your own skin?" Charlie spat, his voice rising. "We were brothers, Duke. I would have done anything for you." "I know, Charlie, I know," Duke said, his voice filled with regret. "But my mother, she was dying. I needed the money. I panicked." "So you left me to rot in jail with a bounty on my head," Charlie raged, his hand tightening on his gun. "You made me a wanted man, Duke. I've been running for my life ever since." "I was going to come back, Charlie," Duke pleaded. "I swear I was going to clear your name, but things got complicated." "Complicated?" Charlie scoffed. "You call this complicated? This is betrayal, Duke. This is the end of everything we ever had." Charlie expressed his pain. "You don't understand, Charlie," Duke continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "My mother, she's all I have left. The doctors said she wouldn't last the month without the treatment. I tried everything. I begged, I borrowed, I stole, but it wasn't enough." He explained that he had planned to send for Charlie once he got his mother settled, but the law was closing in and he was afraid of getting caught. He knew he had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but he was desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you, Charlie," Duke said, tears welling up in his eyes. "You're the closest thing I have to a brother. I swear if I could take it back, I would." He admitted that framing Charlie was a cowardly act born out of panic and fear. He knew he didn't deserve forgiveness, but he hoped Charlie could at least understand. He revealed his desperation. "I was scared." Charlie couldn't forgive him. The words were like a signal. Duke reached for his gun, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and desperation. Charlie reacted instantly, drawing his own weapon. The air exploded with gunfire. Bullets ripped through the silence, echoing off the canyon walls. Charlie and Duke moved with practiced precision, their movements a deadly dance honed by years of experience. Charlie felt a searing pain in his shoulder, but he ignored it, focusing on his target. Saw Duke stumble, clutching his side. The gunfight was a brutal ballet of bullets and blood, a reflection of the shattered bond between them. Each shot fired was a testament to their broken friendship, a symbol of the pain and betrayal that had led them to this desolate place. The gunfight was a brutal exchange. It reflected the shattered bond. There was the smell of gunpowder. The gunfight continued, each man weakened but determined. Charlie, despite the throbbing pain in his shoulder, managed to disarm Duke. He stood over him, his gun pointed at Duke's chest. Duke lay on the ground, bleeding and defeated, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resignation. Charlie's vision swam and his breath came in ragged gasps. He was wounded, but Duke was worse. He had him at his mercy. "It's over, Duke," Charlie said, his voice hoarse. "Just like you said." Duke looked up at him, his gaze unwavering. "Do what you have to do, Charlie," he said, his voice barely audible. "I deserve it." Charlie hesitated, his finger trembling on the trigger. He saw a flicker of the old Duke in those eyes, the friend he had known and loved. The weight of their shared past pressed down on him, making it impossible to pull the trigger. He was wounded. Duke was wounded. What will he do? The moment stretched out, an eternity of indecision. Charlie's mind raced, replaying their entire history, the good and the bad, the loyalty and the betrayal. He saw Duke as a scared kid, a reckless youth, a desperate man. He saw himself, too, a loyal friend, a betrayed partner, a man consumed by revenge. He thought of Duke's mother, lying ill and helpless, depending on her son. He thought of the bounty on his head, the life he would have to continue living, hunted and alone. He thought of the weight of killing a man, of taking a life that could never be returned. He lowered the gun. "Get out of here, Duke," Charlie said, his voice trembling. "Take care of your mother, and don't ever let me see your face again." He had made his choice. He couldn't kill Duke. He just couldn't. The decision had been made. Charlie struggled with the decision. It was a moment of truth. Duke didn't argue. He simply nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. He gathered his supplies, mounted his mule, and rode off into the darkness, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Charlie watched him go, a mix of relief and regret washing over him. He knew he had made the right choice, the only choice he could live with, but it came at a cost. He was still a wanted man, still hunted by the law. He had let Duke go knowing that he would likely never see him again. His decision was influenced by everything they had shared, by the bond that had once existed between them. He couldn't bring himself to erase all those years with a single act of violence. He had chosen mercy over revenge, understanding over hatred. The choice shaped his future. He made a decision about Duke's fate. His past influenced him. Charlie's choice had profound consequences. He remained a fugitive, his name forever tarnished by the accusations against him. He couldn't go back to his old life, couldn't settle down, couldn't trust anyone. He spent years wandering the West, drifting from town to town, taking odd jobs to survive. He became a skilled gambler, a sharp shooter, a man of few words. He carried the weight of his past with him, a constant reminder of the friendship he had lost and the betrayal he had endured. But he also carried something else, a sense of peace. He knew he had done the right thing, that he had chosen humanity over vengeance, and that in the end was all that mattered. His future was uncertain, but he faced it with a quiet dignity, a newfound understanding of himself and the world around him. His choice shaped his future. The consequences were profound. He carried the weight. Charlie mounted his horse, his shoulder throbbing, his heart heavy. He took one last look at Shadow Creek, a place that held both cherished memories and bitter truths. He knew he would never return. He turned his horse towards the setting sun, riding away from the past, towards an uncertain future. He carried a sense of closure, knowing he had faced his demons and made the right choice. But he also carried the weight of what he had done, the lives he had taken, the friendship he had lost. He was a changed man, forever marked by his experiences. He was no longer the naive young outlaw who had blindly followed Duke's lead. He was a survivor, a man who had learned the hard way about loyalty, betrayal, and the complexities of human nature. The ride was long and hard. He carried the weight of what he had done. He rides off. He felt a sense of closure. As Charlie rode, he reflected on everything that had happened. He realized that loyalty was a precious thing, a bond that should never be broken. But he also understood that even the strongest bonds could be tested, that desperation could drive people to do terrible things. He learned that betrayal was a sharp knife that cut deep, leaving scars that never fully healed. But he also learned that forgiveness was possible, that even the most grievous wrongs could be overcome with understanding and compassion. He understood that life on the edge of the law came with a heavy price, a constant cycle of violence and regret. He knew that he could never truly escape his past, but he could choose how it defined him. He understood the true cost. It was expensive. He had learned about loyalty and betrayal. He had a final reflection. And so the legend of Charlie Watts was born. Some said he was a cold-blooded killer, a ruthless outlaw who had betrayed his own partner. Others said he was a victim of circumstance, a man who had been wronged and had sought justice. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between. Charlie Watts was a changed man, forever marked by his past with Duke Hanley. He was a survivor, a man who had learned the true cost of loyalty and betrayal. He rode on, a solitary figure against the vast landscape of the American West, his name whispered in saloons and around campfires, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there was always a choice. He was now part of a legend. His past with Duke marked him. He was a changed man. He became the legend of Charlie Watts.